So it has been a labor of love and privilege. I dare say the highlight of my curatorial career, and it has been really purposeful and meaningful, and it's been incredible. So I think that, as I said, this is what you see here today is the result of many people coming together who believe in the power of art and what it can do in our lives. And I want to say a special thanks to the Getty, and we have Heather McDonald here. We're so grateful to have you, Heather, here representing the Getty, who, I mean, just yesterday I was thinking, like, the Getty, one of the most esteemed organizations in our country, to say Latin American art is something that is worth investing in and working on is mind-blowingly amazing, and we are so grateful to everyone, Joan, Deborah, Jim, you, Ron, everyone that has pushed for this initiative, this Pacific Standard Time LA initiative. And the exhibitions, I've only seen 2. Ours is the best, but the others are incredible, and I encourage you all to travel up and down Southern California to see them, and it's just an honor. Thank you so much. We also have to thank, we have visitors from all over. We have the Minister, Jose Cheavuela. If you could stand up, please. Thank you to the Minister of Guatemala for representing Guatemala and allowing such amazing works of cultural patrimony to be shown here to audiences. Some of this work, and Emiliano will talk about it, has not been shown ever in the United States. Many of the work has not been shown, and some of the works of cultural patrimony, this is a very rare occasion for audiences, since a lot of them are in private collections. So thank you so much. The lenders to this exhibition who allowed their works to travel. Then we also have to thank some of the people that helped us put together, and I'd like to personally recognize Juan and Amanda. Amanda Bustamante and Juan Brenner, if you could stand up. And they are of Ambush Studio, who have designed the identity, the beautiful identity, as well as the photography, as well as the publication, as well as the crating, as well as the shipping, as well as the transporting. And we met with them months ago because they worked with Emiliano, and they just said, whatever we need to do, we're going to do it. And it has been like this across the board with everyone. And so we are just so grateful to you. And we'll get you a basket of Whole Foods for you to go back to Guatemala with, because I know you're obsessed. I also want to thank Alejandro Paz, who's not here. He's an artist in the exhibition, but also an architect and is the exhibition designer. And we're grateful to him as well. If I could have the staff stand up, please, all of you, worked through, especially Arturo and the crew. You guys worked morning, noon, and night, through weekends, through holidays, all with a can-do attitude, and you impress me every day, and I'm so lucky to be able to work with such an incredible team. And there are some of you that aren't here, but we love you, Freddie and Christopher and Melissa and all the others who are not here. I also want to thank the funders to the exhibition. We have so many people who we reached out and said, you know, this is an incredible opportunity, and the museum has this opportunity to really put together something that's groundbreaking, and there were members of our community who stood up, like Nancy Gifford and others. I'm trying to look in the room here, who stood up and said, yes, I will support this. I will put my money where my mouth is and make this happen. And thank you so much for all of you to have done that. I also want to thank our Board of Trustees, and I think we have some of them. If you could stand up, Board of Trustees, please. volunteer group who govern and steer the organization because they love the organization and they love arts in our lives, and they do this out of passion, and we are so grateful to you. Of course, the galleries that helped, 999 and so many other galleries that I can't think of right this second, but you can probably
So the Rio,
of course, yes.
El Ático, sorry,
Fernando's,
yeah, House of Gaga.
Okay, and so many more, and then I mean, before we get to the artist, I just want to thank Emiliano, who has been, this has been a ride. We have been through so much, and it's just been such an honor. I'm so privileged to have worked with you and to learn from you, and I can't wait to get this going, as they say, poppin', often poppin', as they say in the United States. I'm going to turn this over to you.
All right, well, thank you, Miki. I feel exactly the same. It has been a ride. It has had moments of like deep complexity and also of great excitement. I am incredibly excited to be here today and to share this table with you and with colleagues and this wonderful artist from Guatemala, which even at the darkest moments of you know, the challenges that arose through the way, always thinking about the works and thinking about the possibility of showing all these works beyond their usual environments was such an encouraging thought. I also want to thank the museum for this really bold, daring, brave, and visionary decision to make this exhibition. When you reached out to me in the first place, I couldn't believe it in a way. I thought, why would a museum in Santa Barbara want to make this exhibition? And working on it, I do realize now how the potential history of art in Guatemala can also speak to much larger audiences than only ourselves. And really the invitation is for all of us to go and engage in the works and take the time to look at it and to really live them and inquire into the work of these artists that are really working from such different approaches. I think we're also very grateful for the partnerships that this exhibition has, or that partnerships that have made this exhibition possible, particularly the Westmont Ridley Tree Museum of Art. They have been incredible partners, helpful, available, good willing, everything. I mean, really the kind of people that you want to be working with all the time. The Community Arts Workshop of Santa Barbara as well. Their space really, I think, provides a completely different environment to exhibition making, and I think one that in a way is close to the way we do things in Guatemala. So that's also a little, like a little nod to exhibition making in Guatemala, which I think I hope some of you will get that and also be able to understand how the three different venues have a different spirit. We encourage you to visit all three of them because they really come together and generate a broader sense of what Guatemalan art is, the Guatemalan art of the last 50 years. So if you can today, please do go and visit the other two venues. And yeah, finally, I think really the artists, which is why we're doing this, their experiences, their work, their dedication, their understanding, their incredible visions of the world is really what kept us wanting to go back and look for more and uncover a lot of these wonderful works that have, as Miki said, never been shown before outside of Guatemala. Some of them have been rarely even shown in Guatemala, and I think that's something that's really, that's an incredible contribution. We're also making a beautiful, ambitious catalog that for the first time is going to document many, many of these works, and that we hope it's going to be one of the it's going to provide one sort of first approach to a making of a history of Guatemalan art, and I feel incredibly privileged to have been a part of this feat, this incredibly ambitious project. I want to get down then maybe to really talking about what we're here for, which is the art. And I want to introduce 5 incredible artists. I will say, and I'm obviously biased, but I want to say that I think all of the artists that are in the exhibition are possibly the best artists in Guatemala of the last 60 plus years. There are some of them, also some of the best, that were sadly, that we sadly had to leave out for reasons that had not to do with our desire, but that had to do with space or administrative issues or other sorts of things. So we're always very careful to acknowledge that we don't pretend this to be a definitive survey of Guatemalan art, but really a sort of an initial framework from which to approach it, and to encourage anyone or everybody who's interested in the subject to go deeper, to go back to it, to correct or amend or add or question or dialogue about this proposal that we made, because we think that's the only way in which we're going to be able to continue to generate and to create that history that is very much needed. So I'm going to start in order, starting from the ladies, sorry Renato, and I'm going to introduce Jessica Lagunas, and I'm going to also introduce Ronnie Mocan, partly because they have a work in collaboration here in the exhibition. They're also artists individually, and they're also shown in the exhibition, both of them individually. But Jessica Lagunas and Ronnie Mocan have lived in New York for 16 years, and this experience of having moved to New York has been determining, I think, in the way they relate to Guatemala and their artistic practice. In fact, one of their works is called an archivo, so like an archive, but with a T for art, and it has to do, or it consists of a series of documents and press releases and brochures and dossiers that they have collected over the years when they visited exhibitions and other cultural activities in New York. And I think it's a piece that it's very telling of also the opportunities or lack thereof that sometimes we suffer in the country, and I think that really represents the spirit of discovery and of curiosity and of like doing basically anything it takes to, because of the commitment that they decided to make to art. Jessica has also dealt with issues of the feminine identity, the situation of women, the disparity between men and women in society today, and Ronnie has dealt, as in the piece that you encounter when you come into the exhibition, which is called Welcome, and it's made up of these welcome mats, and it's a work that is made up through the generosity and participation of people that decide to loan their welcome mat to the exhibition while it lasts. So we also really wanted to get people involved. Some of you have participated, and we all thank you very much for it. But it also has to do with welcoming, I think, our different visions of art, the artists, and these ideas that are coming from abroad, but that maybe can also find a place amongst us. To my left is Diana Solares. Diana works across very different media, and I apologize for not mentioning your multiple education histories. I think you'll find them in the catalog, so that'll encourage you to go and find them in the catalog. But I really want to talk more about how they relate a little bit to the works that are in the exhibition, and a little bit about how why the dialogues that we've had and how their work is incorporated into the exhibition, because I think that'll also make it, when you get to the works, you'll find them and you'll be able to relate to them rather than to a degree in one university or another. And Diana has worked across different media. She did photography for a long time. She's painted a lot extensively, and the work included in the exhibition is a piece called "To Enter a Material Space of Radiance." And Diana has been exploring space from the perspective of architecture, but also intuition through colors and forms and geometry. And I'm going to, I think in a little bit we're going to ask everyone to talk a little bit about their own visions of art. So I'm going to be very slightly superficial for now, but I want you to put a name and a face to the works that you're going to see later. Following is Alfredo Ceibal. Alfredo Ceibal is mostly a painter, I dare say. He works with ideas of the surreal and what at some point has been called magical realism. I think it really goes way beyond that. But you see a wonderful work done in situ in the galleries here at MCA. Alfredo does these drawings that speculate on a possible or on a potential future of the indigenous civilizations from the Americas had things gone otherwise, meaning had the Spaniards not arrived or had things really worked out different from the planet, and he extends those drawings onto the wall. So I also encourage you to go back to the galleries and see those drawings and how they sort of blend into the architecture of the space and how they propose different worlds and hopefully worlds that are, I think, utopian in a sense. And finally, Renato, somebody who works mostly conceptually. And his work in the exhibition is, I think, an essential document of something that has to do with the exploration of Guatemalan identity in the last few years. These are all issues that will come out, I think, again and again. There's a big divide between indigenous populations and non-indigenous populations in Guatemala, and that's something that has really determined a lot of the art production in the country, especially in the 20th century. All the works that are shown at Ridley Tree Museum of Art at Westmont have a lot to do with that, and that's exactly where his work is shown. So maybe, okay. So maybe just say that at every venue you'll find a slightly different selection of works, works that lean towards one subject or another. And I'll just say briefly, I'm going to say this for that, but the selection is different in every venue, so you'll get a different sense of them, and we encourage you to see all of them so that you put the entire puzzle together.
Before we let you hear from the artist, I mean, I think one of the things that you talked about just briefly is why. Why would I contact you? And why would Museum of Contemporary Art in Santa Barbara propose such an exhibition of Guatemalan art? And I think that when we were being asked by the Getty or requested for proposals by the Getty on what new projects, what new contributions to the field might museums make in the context of Latin American and Latinx art, one of the things that really, as an American curator, one of the things that really resonated for me, or at least one of the questions I had was, I know that Central Americans are the fastest growing population of Latinos in the United States, or in California in particular, but even in the United States. And that there is a vast amount of media attention and rhetoric leveled at Central Americans and their presence here in the United States. And yet it seemed very one-sided to me. While it was definitely very much based on immigration issues or agriculture or politics, I saw very, very, very little to do with the contributions of Central Americans or the relationship that the United States had with Central America. To me, it seemed very imbalanced. I went and did some preliminary research and realized that if you type in Guatemala art, you might find Maya textiles, you might find Maya pre-Columbian Mesoamerican work, but there was truly nothing when it came to the last second half of the 20th century in terms of art, not in Spanish nor in English, and I knew that there was this significant. Yet, I think that I needed to sort of create a balance. At the same time, I knew of artists like Naufas Ramirez Figueroa, Regina Galindo, who were in the show. They'd been showing a documenta at Venice Biennale, and I thought, where did they come from? Like, where did they emerge? How did this happen? And it was that question that I put to Emiliano. And so, therefore, the exhibition title is called Guatemala from 33,000 Kilometers. which I was also told yesterday is the circumference of the Earth. I didn't know that. Ah, see, you guys teach us every day. But we loved, it's the title of the work that you'll see when you walk into the museum, and it's by a master artist. It was painted in 1960. The date that this exhibition takes as its starting point. And the Efraín Resinos. And we loved the notion of distance, not only the distance that a migrant might travel to the United States, not only the distance of sort of speculative fiction and what utopian ideas might be like in other worlds and other realities, but the distance of understanding between our two cultures. And so I think, or our two countries, our two states. And so that really for us really was like a pivotal point in terms of creating a lens for the institution or for the organization. Can I just ask, how many of you, what do you guys know about Guatemala? What comes to mind when you think about Guatemala? Textiles, yeah?
United Fruit.
Ah, United Fruit Company.
Our Benz.
Oh, you know a lot. You're cheating. I'm just kidding. Our Benz, yes. Anybody else? I mean, I think one of the things that we also, what I realized too, is that for a country that we have had extended relationships with, the United States, that most of us really don't know very much about this country. And so part of this exhibition is really to unearth those relationships, expose them, and understand them. So I will turn it over to Emiliano to get started with the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are two more artists joining us at the table. They were driving up from LA, so they got caught up in traffic. But we're thrilled that they made it. So at the far end of the table is Sandra Monterroso. Sandra is in the exhibition with a wonderful 2-channel video called Meditating the Error, Meditando el Error, which deals with issues of, well, I mean, I would say generally speaking, identity relationships between male and female, also the definition or identification of Guatemalans in terms of indigenous or non-indigenous. Again, I mean, it's a recurrent subject. It's in the same venue as Renato, so you can start to sense a little bit the sort of inclination or the spirit of that the works included in Westmont. And Andrea Aragon, third from your left, is a very she's been a photographer for years, and she's been taking pictures of very specific cultural situations that in many ways help us understand who we are and help us capture, I think, some of the most fascinating, problematic, sometimes absurd aspects of the Guatemalan culture with all its complexity and all its magic at the same time. So thank you for joining us, and we're super happy that you still made it so that we can speak a little bit. So I'm going to go back to this idea of how the exhibition is organized, and something that I started mentioning before is that the way we carried out the research, or the way we structured the exhibition, had to do with identifying a number of subjects, a number of themes that eventually turned into clusters of works. These themes we hypothesized really were sort of cross-cutting, or cut across the Guatemalan artistic production of the second half of the 20th century, and are in a way the pillars of contemporary artistic production. They all help to developed, or they all facilitated the development of contemporary practices in Guatemala. And we thought that if we identify those pillars in a way, it was going to be a lot, or it was going to be possible for us to pinpoint a series of works that related to the subjects, rather than having to randomly pick from literally thousands and thousands and thousands of works of art. In some cases, there was a discussion about the sort of the way these works were going to be included in those clusters or in those chapters. I remember very clearly a conversation that I had with Diana about whether her work was going to be included in the popular cultures cluster or in the formal experimentation, and for a variety of reasons that I like actually Diana to maybe develop a little bit, we decided that it was going to be in the formal experimentation, because that's really what she was doing. So if that is okay, and I'm happy to make a super short intro before each one speaks to say where or how you relate to these ideas and this cluster. So given that I've mentioned Diana, maybe Diana, you want to speak a little bit about that?
Thank you, Emiliano, and thank you, Miki, for inviting me. I feel very honored and humbled to be here and with my colleagues and friends, artist friends, especially with this nice public here, as an opportunity to decrease a little bit the invisibility that a strip of land, which is found between Mexico and South America, and that we call Central America, and especially Guatemala being the largest and the most progressive country of the strip called Central America, has suffered an invisibility culturally forever. So this is a great opportunity for us artists to be able to show Americans in California some of the works that we do. In my particular case, as Emiliano introduced me with a sort of category of formal experimentation, I want to say that my work is abstract, which is not common. It's not common in the different ways that currently artists in Guatemala are approaching art. And I feel that abstraction is not easy to depict or portray successfully, nor is it easy for the public to apprehend, experience, or even understand. So that makes it a bigger challenge. Also because Latin American art in general, and especially the art coming from my region, is immediately associated with an issue of social or political or racial issues that are taking place and that are very important issues. But my work comes from another source. Of course, my work is nourished by my environment. That is absolutely true for any artist. I've always lived in Guatemala, so that is my environment, my cultural and geographical visual environment. I love to live there, and I am completely nourished by it. But my sources for the art making come from different sources of knowledge. I read a lot, so I read a lot of science, philosophy, psychology, literature, poetry. So the knowledge that I'm looking forward to, the questions that I'm trying to bring out with my work are questions that have to do with my existential concerns, with my relationship to what is it to be in this world. In that sense, the sculptural piece that I'm showing here is a piece that is very much informed by the ideas of the magnificent work by Andrew J. Mitchell called Heidegger Among the Sculptures, that analyzes how the perception that Martin Heidegger, the philosopher of the 20th century, brought to sculpture when he discovered sculpture in like the 60s, around the 60s, and the notion of space that he proposes is something that has a lot to do with the work I'm doing. This notion of space not being a void that serves only as a way of displaying the work, but as an important ingredient of the work itself. And that is why the piece is called To Enter a Material Space of Radiance. I appropriated that phrase from Andrew Mitchell's book on sculpture, and because I felt that that is what I was trying to do in general. I am trying to solve these issues about the relationship of the individual with the place, with space, with a region, and space not being the void, but space being a positive, participative element that welcomes and embraces the works of art, the sculptures that are able then to radiate among themselves, and which is an analogy of what happens with human beings. The sculpture teaches us how to live in the world. I'm sorry that I took so much time. I guess that you're not supposed to.
Thank you, Diana. I bet you're all dying to see the work. I'm going to pass on the microphone to Jessica and Ronnie, and I'm sorry, there's a microphone over there, and I don't want to pigeonhole you as a couple, but I do think the fact that you are a couple also influences your work, and I think that's interesting, and that's something that is a part of your creative life. In the case of Jessica and Ronnie, they together and separately sort of approach three of the themes or the clusters in the exhibition. Jessica, particularly the one of gender perspectives, which has to do with other ways of understanding the world rather than the heterosexual white male. So really opening up the variety or the possibilities in terms of sexual and gender identities. There's also one called Art Histories, which has to do with artists. It's a sort of institutional critique, so artists looking at the history of art, whether Guatemalan or international, as a source of as a prime material for their work. And finally, Ronnie's work is included in the trauma and violence cluster, which deals with the effects that the war has had in the country and its culture, not necessarily specifically related to the political violence that existed, but sort of to the consequences, and so how this idea of migration also, in a way, has to do with that experience. So I'd be grateful if you can briefly talk about the works we're showing and their relationship to these ideas.
Thank you. Well, we've been together almost 24 years, and I think this is the only piece we have together. So it's not that we do those things. But yeah, about this piece at Archivo, it started because basically in Guatemala there still is a lack of information. We were lucky, we were able to travel. Sometimes we came to New York, we went to Europe as backpackers. In when our first travel to Europe is our first contact with modern art. We went to different museums there, and we were at the Venice Biennale by chance. We didn't know what that was, and yeah, that started our love with contemporary art. And I remember that when we came into New York, for example, we went to buy magazines, and we bought like a whole bunch of magazines because in Guatemala we had no access to that, or they were double the price of what of the magazines. So when we came here, we started collecting everything we could about exhibitions we went, and that's this project. You want to talk about your project?
Yeah, but I just want to add about Archivo that we're very grateful for Miki and Emiliano inviting us here. We're very honored, and to be able to show this project Archivo for the first time, complete in its entirety. It is all this paper and ephemeral material that we have been collecting, as Juan mentioned. But I just want to talk about that it is 210 pounds of paper. So for us it was very impressive, like to weight all that, and also by Emiliano made us a very grateful and excellent suggestion of categorizing all these materials into X numbers of brochures, catalogs, postcards, invitations. So for now, what you see, we have the project consists also. It's the physical archive, but also we have been digitizing every paper. So we created this website that is called archivo.com, and you can see everything that has been digitalized up till now, which is 44% of the whole collection. So that is available on the website, and we're going to continue updating it until we're completely up to date. So that is very exciting for us. And my other work that I am participating here is an artist book that it is called Feminicide in Guatemala, and it is a handmade book where each page of the book so it's a 11-year period from 2000 to 2010, and each page contains the statistic of women that were killed in the country during that year. So most of the statistics were taken from the records from the police. So you can see each page, the number increases, so it is very scary. I started in 2000, the number was 213 women killed, and the highest number is 2008 with 722 women killed, so it's very scary. And for me, that project was very specifically to honor these lives of women, and also to visibilize, make visible all this specific crime of feminicide that is going on. So I think that's.
And my piece is the one you first see when you enter. It's the welcome mats, and it's about welcoming people. You know what's been happening this year.
Briefly add that I'm in doing studio visits. I met you guys the day after the elections,
Yeah, yes.
and you were showing me the welcome mats, and I was just in tears. And I also went to the Bronx Museum to see Andrea's work with the American flag wrapped around a woman, and it was an incredibly profound day for me and for many others, I'm sure.
Well, I think I would just ask you guys if you can briefly say a few words about your works in the exhibition. I really think that's the most useful and fascinating thing to hear. Certainly I hope for the audience, certainly for us. So, yeah, I think in the case of Alfredo has 2 works, and one of them is in different chapters, but maybe it's just interesting to hear about the works themselves.
First of all, I am very, what can I say? It's very difficult for me to talk about my work because I don't have a particular way of putting it. I think that talking about one's work is cheap when you don't have a painting or a sculpture so that the public can see what we are talking about. Talking about my work has been always an issue. I just don't know what to say, but...
Which piece is yours?
Excuse me?
Which piece is yours?
Well, okay, when you go to the... What's the name of the...
Museum or what?
Where my work is.
Here, one here, just here in the museum.
Well, any particular name for the whole? No. Okay. When you go into the museum, you go to the right. There is a painting, there is a drawing framed, and there is a sort of a drawing that comes out of the painting, and that's a series of drawings that I started doing when I think that it was for the biennial Emiliano at Eccentrico, and that's a particular series of drawings that I did that depart from the idea of what would have happened to the indigenous populations in the Americas if they hadn't been conquered or invaded by the European people. So from this idea, I create this series of utopias, and I work on this series of drawings for almost 4 years, but before that, when I was living in New York City back in the late 70s, I started creating these paintings that deal with Guatemalan rituals, celebrations, such as piñatas and funerals, weddings, and I think that these celebrations hide or hold a lot of hidden meaning that define us as Latin Americans, as Guatemalans. Take, for instance, the piñata. The piñata is, I have always been fascinated by piñatas because, on the one hand, they are celebrations for kids to have fun and celebrate birthdays. but also they are violent because in order to get this candy and coins and surprises that the piñatas are stuffed with, you have to, it's a violent act. You have to break the piñata with a stick, and that's the way how you get candy and coins, and you get very excited about this celebration and about this process of being rewarded. And that, in a way, defines our desire to achieve or to get through a violent act, which is breaking the piñata and blinding you. It's a ritual that hides a lot of definitions that defines how we achieve things and get things through violence, and also mixed with fun, because it's fun to go to the piñata and be rewarded this way. The other example is the funeral. The funeral is supposed to be it's a situation where you are sad and you experience a loss of a loved one, but also it's an opportunity to meet people and to eat because they serve food, and people, and also to tell jokes and gossip, cry. So a lot of feelings come together, and that also defines us as Latin Americans. To have the ability to deal with different kinds of emotions at the same time. So I think that when I was in New York, I started doing this work because I thought that was a way of presenting my identity, or to find a space in this city where everything artistically converges. Emerges. Converges. Also, my creating art goes back to the 60s and the 70s. As kids, we would go to the countryside and we would dig in how do you say dumps. In dumps to find objects and do installations, or what you call today installations. As kids playing, we would use old pottery. We would gather the gum dust from Christmas firecrackers, and we would I would do spirals with the gum dust, and also we would gather feathers. I would gather feathers and nail them into the trees, on the trees, and create forms and shapes with these feathers. Also with animal bones and skins and all kinds of things that you would find in the countryside. Later on, when I moved to New York, I learned about Ana Mendieta. And to my surprise, that's what she was doing as work. And I learned that that's what I was doing as a kid was called performance and installation with found objects. Right, there is a name for that, but we were doing that just instinctively. And later on, I moved to, when I moved to New York, I started doing the paintings, and I didn't know anything about art. I didn't know anything about, because I never went to an art school. I refused to go to art schools. I didn't believe in that. Well, that's because I had the ability to do it instinctively. And now I am doing these drawings, so I find myself, and I'm very happy about what I'm about to say, I find myself evolving about the way I create. I think that I like that. I like the fact that I didn't stick to any particular style, but
We'll see what the future brings.
say that again?
We'll see what the future brings.
We'll see what the future brings. It's bringing a lot of surprises.
Alfredo, I hate to interrupt, but I think we're going to have to leave the theater relatively soon,
Okay.
and I'd love us to hear a little bit about the other works. Is that okay? But I encourage everybody to also approach the artist, and I'm sorry to take this liberty, but I think it is really such a privilege to have everybody here. So I hope you don't mind me that. And I was hoping that maybe Andrea could tell us a little bit about her Home series, which is the series that the photograph that we're showing in the exhibition belongs to, and it's really a very timely piece in general, but also to be showing here now.
Thank you. Yeah, the piece I'm showing is a photograph of a woman wrapped in the American flag and looking at the horizon. And as Emiliano said, it's part of a larger series called Home, about 20 or more images that I started in the year 2000. And so it's been like 16 years or 17 years already, and it's never gonna end. It's work in progress because as immigration keeps going, my project will keep going. I'm interested in the effects of immigration of the Guatemalans to the United States from the point of view of the ones who stay, and how emptiness and missing and sadness of being families divided is also mixed with wealth, of course, but because of the money they send, and also these huge houses that are changing the architecture and their lifestyles and clothing, and also the very fond thankfulness that people in Guatemala have towards the United States for holding their families here and letting them stay, or maybe not. So that's what it is about, mainly.
And finally, to close this round, I think Sandra's and Renato's works are completely different, both in media as well as in formal vocabulary. But I find them to have something in common very profound, which is trying to understand sort of deep categories that have more than united, really divided the way we as Guatemalans understand ourselves. In Renato's case, as I was saying, this relationship between the indigenous and the non-indigenous, what we call Ladino. And in Sandra's case, also that, but also the relationship between man and woman. And I think these are categories that, in as much as we can understand better, we're going to be able also to sort of try to bridge those gaps. So I by no means I'm trying to fuse them together, but I think they dialogue so well, and in fact they're shown relatively close to each other precisely for that reason. And I wonder if you can both comment on your works.
Okay. The piece that you will see is a work that I did based on an archive. So I was trying to find out about, or I'm very curious about identity. I have a Guatemalan passport, and that's all I know about my Guatemalan identity. Because I've traveled, I'm in Guatemala or abroad, and I just feel like a citizen of the planet, for example. So when I'm in Guatemala, people tend to, or like in any other country, people tend to find a very specific sense of what makes them from their country. I still haven't found mine. And doing this work was based on that motivation. So I went to this Center of Mesoamerican Investigation, CIRMA, and I proposed to them that I wanted to do this work. And I said I wanted to touch upon the topic of Ladinos. Ladinos are the people out between the indigenous population and the European population that came to Guatemala. So a Ladino is someone that is in between and that is totally mixed. And that led me to think what makes a person more or less Ladino. So if I'm closer to having more of an indigenous background, am I less Ladino? Or if I am closer to being, let's say, European descendant, I'm less Ladino, right? But what is really, what's really surprising to me is that for the people that are on the extremes, you're a Ladino, and that's it. If you're not the extreme, then you're a Ladino. So it doesn't matter how close you are. Either you are a true European descendant, or you're a true Mayan descendant, a true indigenous person. And then if you are mixed, you're a Ladino. And that makes a very strange sort of identity, for example. So the director of the center said, wow, that's a really interesting idea, but you're totally lost with that. You really have to do some research because there's a lot of research on this topic. So you have to read all this stuff and look into more information. And she said, what kind of pictures do you want to use? So I said, I want to use identity pictures. And I found the archive of Mejia. Mejia is a photographer that had a photography studio in Guatemala City from the 1960s to the 1980s. And in this studio, he just made portrait photos. Then he died, and all the negatives went into a box. And then somewhere at the end of the 90s, the family found them, and they brought them to CIRNA, to the Center of Investigation. They say, here we have these photos, you guys want to keep them? And they were, okay, but we don't know what we're gonna do with them. And then 10 years later, I found them and I said, I want to use these pictures. So they were like, okay. That was a bad decision for them because it became very conflictive how I use the images, how I present them, because they were shown around Guatemala and they looked like very innocent identity pictures. But in them were ex-presidents, ex-soldiers that were part of massacres in Guatemala, and when the family started to see these pictures coming out in the public, they were like, what is that picture of my father doing there? What is that picture of this person doing there? And then it became a huge problem. And we said, this person wanted to sue us for showing these pictures. Then I said to this person, like, listen, this is a fiction. This is not your father that we're putting there. This is a character I created to look into Ladinization. What is being a Ladino? What is the identity of Guatemala? And that's something I can tell you about that work. Then you will have to see it for yourselves and make your own opinions about it.
Well, hi, it's a pleasure and honor also to be here. And my work is called Meditating the Mistake. And as you will see, it's a two-channel installation. It's one in front of each other, and it's kind of has different types of layers. The first layer that this piece has is the layer about my own history, about my background. And since I recognized that I had an indigenous background and how, in a way, I was trying to deal and to find out how am I will to be able to realize that in my own history, as Renato said, to realize that I will not be a Ladino anymore, and how and why, as a Sandra, as a woman, as a Mayan woman now, since I recognize that I have this indigenous background, I've become to acknowledge that I will be a Ladino or Latina anymore. So in a way, the other layer that it has also is cosmological way. As I work in my work, I inspire myself from cosmology, Mayan cosmology. So you will see black and red as a very important symbols in the 4 cardinal points for our symbolical history, and red is very important as well as black. So that's why I decided to design all the costumes in black, in a way in black, another way in red. As you will see, is the traditional costumes that we used to have in the north of Guatemala, where my grandmother come from and was born. It's called the Alta Verapaz, and it's a Maya Quechua background, which is very different between the other Mayan communities. It has an own type of history, has an own type of way of dress, a way of thinking, or in the spirituality is very different. So I am focused in this specific type of cultural background, the Mayan Quechua cultural background. That's why also I started to learn the language as well, but not learn the language because I needed to communicate in the community. To learn the languages, so I wanted to understand how this cultural think or feel or is, a comprehensive way of. And I discovered that this language has a very metaphorical language. It's very poetical language. So you will see also this another type of layer that this piece has. It has this poetical layer. So the dialogues that you will find between the women and the men, and it has all these layers in between. The historical layer, because it has the history about my grandmother when she came to the city and left behind her own history. And you will see a colonial image in a way, and on the other hand you will see like a very rural image. So it's all about these paradoxes that I also my work has to be with. And the other way is the political way that I'm noticing is very the first layer that we can find, but also is implicit in the piece as well.
Thank you both. Thank you. As you can see, each of these works really deserves an entire conversation. I think about them, but I think I'm going to pass on the mic to Miki and just really encourage you to come out and see them in person and maybe engage in a little more conversation with any of us.
Thank you so much, and we'll see you at all of the events. In the audience.
Miki, are all the artists here tonight in the museum?
No, they're spread across the 3 venues of Westmont Community Art Workshop and the Museum of Contemporary Art.